Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in every life when the walls that once surrounded us begin to crack, seasons shift, doors open, and what once held us in place can no longer contain who we are becoming. This moment, this awakening, is what I call the expiration of isolation. Isolation often arrives quietly. It can be born from pain, disappointment, or even the belief that withdrawing will protect us. For a time, it serves a purpose. It gives space to heal, to reflect, to regroup. But isolation was never meant to be permanent. It has an expiration date. When isolation expires, it signals that your growth has outpaced the limits of your confinement. The voice within you becomes louder than the silence around you. The dream inside you begins to press against the walls that kept it small. And suddenly, what was once comfortable becomes too tight to hold the expanding version of you. This expiration is not a moment of fear. It is a moment of transition. It calls you to reconnect, to re-engage, to step into a world that needs the gifts you developed in the quiet places. It invites you to trust again, to hope again, and to believe again that your life carries purpose beyond your solitude. You are not emerging empty-handed. You are stepping out carrying wisdom you did not have before, clarity that was forged in stillness, and strength that grew when no one else could see it. The expiration of isolation does not mark the end of your story. It marks the beginning of a new chapter, one where your voice, your presence, and your purpose take their rightful place. So when you feel the nudge, when the season shifts, when your spirit whispers that it is time, do not hesitate. Step forward, step boldly. Your isolation has expired and your destiny is waiting. Isolation is an experience nearly everyone encounters at some point in life, yet its meaning is often misunderstood. When people hear the word isolation, they tend to associate it with loneliness, abandonment, or rejection. But isolation is not always a punishment, nor is it always a sign that something has gone wrong. In many seasons, isolation becomes a silent classroom, a hidden workshop where growth, clarity, and transformation quietly unfold. It can be a place where noise fades, voices that once influenced you become distant, and you are left alone long enough to discover what truly matters. Even though isolation may feel heavy or confusing, it carries a purpose that often becomes clear only in hindsight. Sometimes isolation arrives because life shifts. People you once depended on drift into their own worlds. Opportunities you were sure of evaporate unexpectedly. The routines that once filled your day no longer have a place. In these moments, it is easy to assume that isolation means the world is turning its face away from you. But isolation can act as a divine pause, a moment intentionally carved out to separate you from distractions, from routines that no longer serve you, and from environments that cannot support your next level of growth. In the stillness of isolation, you are given the space to see yourself honestly, your strengths, your weaknesses, your dreams, and even your fears. When life gets too noisy, these truths remain hidden, overshadowed by constant motion. Isolation clears the soundboard and brings your inner voice back to the forefront. Although isolation feels uninvited, it can play the role of a necessary guardian. It protects you from moving too quickly, from settling into situations that would stunt your development, and from aligning with people who are not meant to journey with you long term. It slows you down so you can recalibrate. Consider a seed planted in the soil. It is buried alone, surrounded by darkness, seemingly forgotten. But that isolation is necessary for the seed to break open and release what is inside. Without that hidden season, no plant could ever emerge. Isolation, in many ways, is the soil around your becoming. It shields you from what would interfere with your growth and gives your potential the privacy it needs to mature. But as necessary as isolation can be, it was never designed to last forever. A seed cannot remain underground once it has matured, or it will rot. In the same way, after isolation has completed its purpose, remaining in it past its expiration can cause a person to shrink instead of grow, to fear connection instead of embrace it, and to cling to solitude even when the season for solitude has passed. That is why understanding the temporary nature of isolation is essential. It is a season, not a sentence. A transition, not a destination. A process, not your identity. There comes a moment when the lessons learned in solitude must be carried into the open. The insight gained in quiet must be tested in action. The strength built internally must be expressed externally. When isolation has served its purpose, life begins to nudge you gently, or sometimes urgently, toward movement. You may begin sensing restlessness, frustration, or a pull inside toward people, opportunities, or ideas that scare you a little because they push you beyond your comfort zone. This is often the sign that isolation is ending. The cocoon begins to loosen for the butterfly, not because the cocoon was wrong, but because staying in it any longer would limit what the butterfly is now capable of. Isolation shapes you, but you are not meant to stay shaped only for the inside. One of the challenges with isolation is that people who grow comfortable in it sometimes resist leaving it behind. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, or fear of vulnerability can make isolation feel safer than re-entering the world. But safety is not the same as purpose. Staying isolated after its purpose is complete can rob you of relationships that could bless you, opportunities that could elevate you, and experiences that could fulfill you. Just as isolation is purposeful, so is connection. Humans are not designed to flourish alone indefinitely. Creativity grows in collaboration, healing deepens in community, and purpose expands when it is shared. Recognizing that isolation is temporary allows you to embrace it when it comes instead of fighting it or resenting it. It also allows you to release it when the season turns instead of gripping it out of fear. When you understand that isolation is a tool rather than a destination, you can stand in the quiet places without feeling abandoned, and you can step out of them without feeling unprepared. Isolation is one chapter in the book of becoming, but no single chapter defines the whole story. Isolation is temporary and purposeful, but when its work is done, it gently hands you back to the world, stronger, clearer, and more aligned than before. Growth is rarely loud, yet it is always persistent. It happens quietly, pressing against the boundaries of who you have been and urging you toward who you are becoming. When you are in a season of isolation, growth is often happening beneath the surface in ways you may not even recognize at first. You may feel as though you are standing still, yet internally something is stretching, awakening, and preparing you for a stage of life much larger than the one you previously occupied. Eventually, this growth begins to create discomfort inside your isolation. What once felt safe and familiar starts to feel tight, limited, or even suffocating. This is one of the most important signs that the season of isolation has served its purpose and that your growth is now pushing you out of it. Growth is not just about developing skills or gaining knowledge. Growth changes your perspective. It alters your desires. It expands your capacity. It shifts your priorities and transforms your inner landscape so that your external world can no longer remain the same. When this inner transformation becomes too big for the isolated environment you are in, life begins nudging you towards something new. You may start to long for deeper conversations, more meaningful relationships, or opportunities that once intimidated you. This longing is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you have outgrown the place you once needed. Often, the push out of isolation begins as an unsettling feeling. You may notice that silence no longer feels soothing, but becomes a reminder of what you are missing. You may find old habits unsatisfying or old patterns no longer fitting the way they used to. Growth creates friction because expansion creates pressure. Just as a sprouting seed begins to press against the soil around it, your development begins to put pressure on the walls of your isolation. It is not that the isolation was wrong. It was necessary, but you have changed. You are no longer who you were when you entered that season. Something inside you knows that if you do not move, you will become stagnant rather than strong. The remarkable thing about growth is that it often becomes visible only when you begin to step out. You might not feel ready, confident, or complete, but growth doesn't wait for perfection. Growth calls you forward even when you cannot fully see the path ahead. You might find that new opportunities begin to appear, doors you didn't even knock on, connections you weren't actively seeking, or ideas that suddenly ignite excitement. These are often confirmations that your isolation is no longer serving your future. Growth is ushering you into a larger space where your newly developed strengths can be used, shared, and expanded. Human beings are designed for evolution. When you grow, your environment must evolve with you. Staying in an isolated place after you have outgrown it becomes emotionally and spiritually limiting. You may even begin experiencing conflict within yourself. Part of you wants to stay where it feels predictable, but another part pushes you toward something unfamiliar but necessary. This internal tug of war is growth trying to get your attention. It is life saying, there is more for you than where you are right now. As your growth pushes you out of isolation, you will begin to recognize the value of connection in ways you didn't before. The relationships you once avoided may now become essential to your purpose. The conversations you once dismissed may now carry meaning. Isolation teaches you how to be with yourself. Growth teaches you how to be with others. The combination of both is what prepares you to step confidently into opportunities that align with your new level of maturity and awareness. Opportunities sometimes come disguised as challenges. You may be forced out of isolation by circumstances that feel uncomfortable, an unexpected responsibility, a new environment, a shift in your personal or professional life. But even these moments carry the fingerprints of growth. They force you to stretch, adapt, and utilize the strength you developed in private. Growth refuses to let you shrink. It refuses to let you settle for a life smaller than your capabilities. It insists that you step into spaces where your potential can breathe. Connections are also a natural result of outgrowing isolation. You begin to attract people who resonate with your new mindset, new goals, and new values. Growth aligns you with individuals who encourage your evolution rather than hinder it. The isolation you experience becomes the foundation of wisdom that guides you into more meaningful relationships built on authenticity, shared purpose, and mutual elevation. The most powerful truth about growth is that it does not ask for your permission to unfold. It simply happens as you live, learn, and mature. But what growth does ask of you is willingness, a willingness to leave behind environments that can no longer sustain your expansion. A willingness to trust that stepping out of isolation is not a loss, but an evolution. A willingness to believe that what is ahead of you is greater than what is behind you. When growth pushes you out of isolation, it is not rejecting you, it is promoting you. It is telling you that you are ready for new opportunities, ready for deeper connections, ready for a season where your voice, gifts, and wisdom can impact the world around you. Growth is the gentle but undeniable force that carries you from isolation into purpose, from solitude into community, and from preparation into manifestation. Emerging from isolation is more than simply stepping out of a quiet season. It is a rebirth of identity, awareness, and direction. When you come out of a period where life has slowed down, where distractions have faded, and where your inner world has become your primary focus, you do not come out the same way you went in. Isolation has a way of stripping away what is unnecessary, sharpening what is essential, and revealing who you are without the noise of expectations, pressure, or external influence. When that season ends, you rise with a strength that was forged in silence, a clarity that was shaped by reflection, and a purpose that has been waiting for the right moment to be recognized. The strength that emerges from isolation is not the loud, aggressive kind that demands to be seen. It is quiet, steady, rooted strength. It is the strength of someone who learned to stand without applause, who found confidence without validation, and who learned to rely on their inner voice, rather the opinions of others. This strength is not easily shaken because it was built during a time when you had no choice but to depend on your own resilience. Isolation forces you to confront yourself, to face fears you once avoided, and to understand the patterns and beliefs that have shaped your life. Through that confrontation, you gain strength not from avoiding battles, but from fighting them internally and emerging victorious, even if no one else sees the victory. Along with strength comes clarity. Clarity is one of the greatest gifts of isolation. When everything around you becomes still and you are no longer influenced by constant noise, you begin to hear your own thoughts differently. The things that once confused you begin to make sense. Decisions that felt difficult become easier. You begin to see people more clearly, not through the lens of emotion or habit, but through the lens of truth. You see yourself more clearly too. Your desires, your limitations, your dreams, and your potential. Clarity removes the fog that life sometimes creates, and it points you toward the direction that aligns with who you truly are rather than who you were trying to be for others. It is often in the quietest seasons that your inner compass recalibrates and begins pointing decisively toward your next chapter. Purpose is the final and perhaps most profound gift that emerges when isolation expires. Isolation allows you to strip away roles, expectations, and labels that you may have unknowingly carried. It gives you time to question what you are truly meant to do, what brings you fulfillment, what ignites your passion, and what makes your life feel meaningful. Purpose does not always arrive with grand announcements. Sometimes it comes in the form of a renewed interest, a dormant dream waking up, or a feeling that something inside you is being called into action. The purpose that emerges after isolation is grounded in authenticity. It is no longer shaped by what others think you should do, but by what your soul feels compelled to pursue. When you merge the strength, clarity, and purpose gained in isolation, you become someone who is ready to move into a new season with intention rather than impulse. You begin to make choices with conviction rather than confusion. You step into opportunities knowing that you are prepared, Not because everything is perfect, but because you have been shaped and refined for this moment. Emerging from isolation means stepping back into the world with a deeper understanding of yourself and a renewed confidence in the path before you. Another powerful aspect of emerging from isolation is the sense of gratitude that often accompanies it. You begin to appreciate things you once overlooked, simple conversations, supportive relationships, moments of connection, and even challenges that once felt overwhelming. Gratitude becomes a natural response because you understand the value of what you nearly lost or what you temporarily stepped away from. This gratitude fuels your purpose and strengthens your resolve, allowing you to move forward with humility and awareness. As you come out of isolation, you may notice that your priorities shift. Things that once consumed you no longer hold the same weight. People who once drained you no longer have the same access to your life. Environments that used to distract you begin to feel misaligned. This shift is not accidental. It is the result of the clarity you gained and the purpose you discovered. Emerging from isolation often requires letting go, not out of bitterness, but out of understanding that not everyone and not everything can accompany you into your next chapter. Your emergence is also an invitation. It invites new relationships, partnerships, and opportunities that resonate with the person you have become. You attract differently because you think differently, speak differently, and carry yourself with a confidence that is rooted in personal growth. The world begins to open for you in ways it did not before, not because the world changed, but because you did. Ultimately, emerging from isolation is an act of stepping into alignment with your true identity. It is the moment where your inner development meets outer expression. The lessons learned, the healing completed, the strength gained, and the clarity achieved all converge to propel you forward. The next chapter of your life is not a continuation of the old one. It is a new beginning shaped by the work you did when no one was watching. You walk out of isolation with a renewed sense of who you are and a powerful awareness of who you are becoming.